You were live.
All righty, everybody. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast. Billy Musio here alongside Bradley Stalder, and we're ready for another fun and stat-filled Fanalist episode. If you have not done so already, make sure to follow us on Twitter at FFFanalist, at FFMusio, at FFStalder. And you can find this podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, CastBox, Castro, Google Podcasts, Podcast, and TuneIn Radio. Pretty much every single platform that there is known to man. You can pretty much find it on there. And if not, message us. We'll get it on there. How about that for a promise? Today's show is brought to you by Grocery Outlet Bargain Market. So if you have a grocery out in your area, make sure to swing by and check out the amazing deals. But tonight, Bradley and I are going to be digging into the free agencies and the signings here for week one of the 2021 season. But before we do that, we wanted to give you a few reminders. One, our website at fantasyfootballfanalist.com, where you can find rankings and projections and pretty much articles, stats, anything, you name it, it's there. We're expanding on that. We have an outstanding article guy there named Wayne, and he's just been pumping out material faster than I can even type it up. So Wayne, you're fantastic, buddy. We love you. And as a reminder, we're going to still be recording once a week here during the off seasons. Sans a few breaks. There may be some times where family things pop up, or hey, there just might not be going not a lot going on. So Bradley and I may take a day off here and catch back you next week here. Another reminder here, we have our tournament here, the Fantasy Football Fanalist Tournament. So if those of you who are unfamiliar, it is very similar to the FFPC, same style and scoring here. So for those who want to get their feet wet but don't want to make the plunge with the Sharks, you can join us Sharks over at the fantasyfootballfanalist.com, where we have 12 teams of 12 competing head-to-head for a tournament of champions. And it's only a $50 buy-in. And if you use our promo code over at Prize Picks with FFF, you get $25 off your team as well. So more details of that can be found on the website. Just click on the tournament link there on one of the tabs at the top, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you have them as well. So all that being said, we do have a big announcement. We can't go through the details yet, but once it's official, we can break it down. We'll probably do it on Twitter. We'll probably do it on Facebook. We'll honestly probably even do it on our site. And so that detail is Bradley and I are going to be moving to a big site. I can't give the name of the site up yet, but we're going to be moving to a big site. We're going to be managing and operating their Google page with their YouTube page. And there should be a lot of people there to listen to yours truly. They get to stare at our pretty faces like you have for the past year or so. So for all of our loyal listeners and subscribers, if you would like to, once that time comes, make sure to follow us on Twitter if you have not done so already, because all those announcements will be coming through Twitter. But we are very, very, very excited for this big change. And you know what? I think it's going to be great for the listeners as well. It's going to come with a lot of perks. There's going to be a lot of new details, a lot of data. And I just think that there's going to be a lot here that listeners are going to be able to benefit from. So, man, all that being said, last piece is make sure to check out our affiliates link on our website. Dynasty trade calculators there. We have Trophy Smack being posted up here probably by tomorrow. And then we have Prize Picks as well as Monkey Knife Fight. So make sure with March Madness around the corner, or I should say here now, and baseball around the corner, that we have a lot of affiliate links that you can still be used for your benefit and to get you some money, because all of those are matching your money up to $100 at Prize Picks, up to $50 over at MKF Monkey Knife Fight. So, hey, make a small deposit. They'll match it up to you so you can test it out. Free money in your pocket, easy peasy lemon squeezy, and they will get you rocking and rolling on that site. And again, any questions, make sure that's Bradley and I, but it's pretty easy to follow the steps, and it's all on the website, and you can make sure that you are able to make sure that you're benefiting off those codes. Well, Bradley, that was a lengthy intro. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, Billy. Really excited for tonight's podcast.
It's been 2 weeks now. We took a week off last week.
We did, and a lot has happened in that 2-week span. I had to go back and look through all the different transactions that had happened. And today, tonight, this morning, the podcast is going to focus on free agency. There may be some trades that we reference here and there, or trade rumors, but we're going to primarily focus on free agency transactions, cuts, and then signings. So that's what you can expect. We'll obviously do a lot of roster overhauls and looking at how these dynamics have changed throughout the offseason, especially as we get to the rookie draft and after the rookie draft.
Yeah, the draft's always shaking things up, and I think there's still even a lot of free agency names out there that can still shake things up as well. But hey, time is still on our side. We're still going to have a lot of deciding pieces that are going to land and really shake up the NFL. And I cannot wait for the NFL draft, because everything that we just did in free agency, it's usually tenfold, and everyone freaks out. Their favorite player goes to a team, and then it's everyone's just overstatic with joy.
Well, a lot of teams were overstatic with not just joy, but also signing players. And the Patriots and the Texans led the way this free agency out of the gate. Seems like, who didn't they sign? The Patriots, the Patriots signed a ton of players. We'll review, of course, a lot of them. The Texans didn't have a lot of big splash signings. There were a few of them that we will review. However, my beloved Packers haven't made much of a splash. I know that the Minnesota Vikings haven't made much of a splash. There are teams that have already figured out whether they wanted to target free agents or whether they wanted to wait to fill certain holes in the draft. And we will have a pre-draft podcast, I'm just throwing this out here, Billy, where we'll address the needs that we anticipate that teams will need to fill in preparation for the draft. So as I'm working through projections, we'll start figuring out where are the holes, where are some of the needs, and we'll predict what some of those holes are going to be filled by.
And that's always fun. And everyone just keep in mind projections. And like we say here, we're the fanalists. We don't claim to be experts in any matter. So yes, we're typically better than your average Joe. But that being said, even the experts make mistakes here. Bradley and I are not going to be 100%. It's always been the fanalists' MO to be upfront, honest, and also to show kind of our process, and also to review that process and say, where did we hit? Where did we miss? And quite frankly, we'll probably do that as well. We'll go through after we've done the draft. We'll see where people have landed, and then see, hey, what did we miss here? How did we miss it? And how can we get better as fanalists ourselves?
Absolutely, Billy. Let's get started with free agency. And it kind of kicked off a little early with the re-signing or extension of Dak Prescott, 4 years, $160 million to stay in Dallas. And Dak Prescott was on a tear. We were talking about it off air a little earlier, but through the first 5 weeks of 2020, he had two of the top three quarterback performances of all quarterbacks for the first 5 weeks. All of his weapons are returning. Hopefully a healthy offensive line. That's something that the Cowboys struggled with last year. I think his ceiling was like scratched last season. He only played 5 games. He had his touchdown rate was only a 4.1%. For perspective, I think Aaron Rodgers was at about 9%. He was only behind Nick Mullins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and deep ball completion percentage. So he was completing a lot of deep passes. They just weren't going in the end zone. So that seems like, a natural increase, maybe 5-6% touchdown rate. And while the NFL air yards per game, he had stellar 68% completion percentage. So he was completing his passes, completing them well down the field, just wasn't scoring the level of touchdowns we would expect. So I would expect those to go up. And fantasy managers have to be ecstatic about how this will positively impact all three of Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and even running back Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, and that was the common narrative, that he didn't have the touchdowns. But if you look at so he only got to play 5 games. He didn't even finish the 5th game. But so week 1, he only threw, 1 touchdown, 266 yards. But then week 2, he had 450 yards. Week 3, and that was 1 passing touchdown, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Then week 3, he had 472 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Week 4, he had 4 passing touchdowns and 500 yards. He had just hit stride, I feel like. The offense was starting to click, coming on all cylinders. I mean, I think it was like week 12, week 13, and he still led the NFL in 400-yard passing games last year. And it's just to show you like what kind of season Dak Prescott was having. On an extrapolated number, he was so almost on track for 6,000 yards. I mean, unheard of in the NFL. Even in today's modern NFL where it's pass heavy, those type of numbers are just asinine and just ludicrous. So I hope to see this offense click with him back. I hope to see, my only concern is the offensive line and coming back, and are they going to be healthy and the band's back, but hey, what's that narrative going to look out to be? I think if that's fixed this year, I think that we're looking at a repeat for the beginning of 2020 from Dak Prescott.
And I think the Cowboys put to rest or put to bed the narrative that Dak isn't the franchise quarterback or that they're not willing to make a commitment to him. And I think that setting the tone that the franchise is centered around Dak Prescott, it's not centered around Ezekiel Elliott. Like, it's just not. And I know that a year and a half ago, Zeke signed this 6-year, $90 million deal. He could get cut this offseason, and yeah, it would hurt the Cowboys a little bit, but in a tight market, like nothing's out of.
It's not going to happen. It has to happen in 3 days, or else his contract's fully guaranteed. So,
so we'll see.
Yeah, they got 3 days to figure it out, but I don't think it's Tony Pollard's season quite yet. As much as I would love to see it,
I've got a lot of Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I know you do, and I do too, and I love Tony Pollard, but I still think Zeke's coming back to Dallas this year. They got the band back together, and they're ready to rock and roll.
Well, speaking of bringing a quarterback back, Cam Newton re-signed with the New England Patriots, 1 year, $14 million. We talked about Dak Prescott being one of the best downfield throwers, air yards, completion percentage. Cam Newton was like the complete opposite side of the spectrum. He was 42nd in air yards per game, behind the likes of Taylor Heineke and Jeff Driscoll. That's how bad it was for Cam Newton. He had 5 games last season of 200. So 200. We're talking about Dak Prescott having 400-yard passing games. Cam Newton had 5 where they were 200 or more passing yards, and that was against Seattle, who had a really, really rough secondary when they faced them. New York Jets twice, Houston, and Miami. The one Miami game, sure, but those are not good matchups, and all the rest, he really, really struggled to pass the ball. This was not good. He led all quarterbacks, though, with 12 rushing touchdowns. The offensive scheme was centered around Cam Newton and his rushing ability. It seems like his shoulder, we still have questions on it, but his foot seems to be pretty well healed. And he led, as I said, quarterbacks in rushing ahead of Kyler Murray, who had 11, ahead of Josh Allen and Taysom Hill, your boy Taysom Hill, who had 8 rushing touchdowns. This deal, $14 million 1 year, it's soft enough for the Patriots to draft a quarterback or sign another veteran. Alex Smith comes to mind. The deal also began this avalanche of other Patriots who had signed. We'll talk more about the Patriots signing all the other players, but Cam Newton was the first domino to fall, and I think that that's what drew a lot of the free agents here. Is you need, if you want to sign a Jonnu Smith or a Hunter Henry, you need some quarterback there. So I think Cam Newton was the necessary first piece to be signed.
Yeah, I really didn't think he was going to come back, quite frankly. I thought he played like crap last year. And how much of it was COVID, like he claimed?
The COVID cloud.
The COVID cloud. I mean, he looked really good the first few weeks. I mean, I even did a piece on him saying he looks like he came back to vintage form. And then he got COVID, and it was just all downhill from there. So, hey, I'll give the guy the benefit of the doubt. He got COVID. He played like crap the rest of the season. Several players said they felt just kind of cloudy after getting COVID. So maybe it's a real thing, maybe not. I mean, but accuracy was an issue all year, as it has been through his career. I mean, it was kind of the step that Josh Allen took last year to Cam has never taken in his career. And I think that I just don't think that you can blame COVID for that when he hasn't ever made that step in his entire career so far. So I truly think that Cam Newton's just towards the end of his career. He's had one hell of a career and he had a good run, but I mean, the beatings he's taken, the injuries he's taken, the inaccuracy he has, everything kind of piled up. I think a lot would have to go right in order for him to kind of reshape and come back to form. Because let's face it, the signings that they've made are uninspiring, to say the least. Yes, you have 2 great tight ends now, but I mean, come on, really? You're going to spend all that money?
Agler.
Yeah, you're going to spend all that money on Nelson Agler and Kendrick Bourne, and come on. I mean, red and gold in the back, and I love Kendrick Bourne, but he's not worth all that money, quite frankly. So I'm weary with Cam Newton. I have a lot of hesitation here, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, let's see what he does. But week 2, 3, if he's the same Cam that he was last year, I'm out.
Well, I'm not out on Tom Brady here, our Super Bowl champion. He gets extended through 2022, keeps Brady with the Bucs, reduces their cap hit, allowed other free agents to sign. Talk about being like a good teammate and willing to just throw the chips in, saying, hey, I know I'm essentially going to earn all of this back. And we get to have like Levante David or Shaq Barrett or Rob Gronkowski re-sign, able to sign or target Godwin. We'll talk about him in a second here, but I think this is a selfless move by Brady to give him another chance at a title.
Every other quarterback's out here signing $160 million deals, and Tom Brady's like, oh, I'll take less so we can get more. I mean, you think that players would figure it out by now. It seems like Juju figured it out today, but everybody else is like, oh no, give me more. And then, oh, why can't you get me players? Like, it's Bradley's philosophy here. What goes up must come down. And if you're asking for all this money going up in the world, then your supporting cast is going to come down. So Tom Brady has the winning formula he has for years. And I think that other players really need to take note here, because he keeps doing it year in and year out. And I know he's got a million other businesses and he makes, avocado tequila and everything else in the world. But I just think that people need to take note of what he's done. He's had one hell of a career. He's been very successful, and he's been able to build teams around these contracts that he keeps giving the teams that he's playing for that allow them to make these type of moves. And there's something to be said about glory, and there's something to be said about money. And I'm going to take the player who wants glory all day over the player who wants the money.
Especially in a tight cap year, asking for more and more just doesn't make sense. And for someone, I mean, it really comes down to what are you going into football for, right? Are you going in for the football, or the money, or the glory? And many players are like, this is my one opportunity to earn, I don't know, $100 million. But instead, I'm taking a 1-year deal or 2-year deals or whatever to keep proving myself. And I think that, it really speaks to maybe the economy of what players are expecting.
Yeah, but take a look also at like endorsements. I mean, you win games and you win championships, you get endorsements. So there's something to be said also for making sure that your team is able to make those type of moves and saying, hey, we're going to make the Super Bowl. We're going to win the Super Bowl, and then we're going to get endorsements. I mean, having that type of motivation rather than just saying, hey, I want 18 million or whatever it is that XY player wants, maybe taking a little bit less like Juju did, helping the team out, showing a loyalness to the team and to the organization. And then, hey, when the time comes, they're going to take care of that loyal player. But hey, in the meantime, let's help our team out. And let's build around this, and let's build something great. I mean, that's just my philosophy, I guess. And not everyone's going to do that. So, but
that's why he's the GOAT. That's why he keeps winning, and it's a winning structure. And when you figure out the winning formula, you keep replicating it. So good on Tom Brady, good on the Bucs for leaning into that. Jameis Winston re-signed by the New Orleans Saints. This comes along with a Taysom Hill contract restructure. Drew Brees retired, and so the Saints had to look somewhere else, and that includes Jameis Winston competing for a starting quarterback role. We're so far away from the start of the season, but I doubt Taysom Hill goes away. He had 8 rushing touchdowns, as I mentioned before. And even if Jameis wins the starting role, I think he has limited upside due to the touchdowns that Hill, Kamara, Latavius Murray are going to get. It's not Tampa Bay with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, and the supporting cast is just so much better. I think right now, and the coaching staff, I think and in general, what was happening with his time in Tampa and where he's at now, I just think this is such a better situation for him. I think he was also able to be humbled a little bit. He ate some humble pie, losing his starting position, and let's talk about what he's learned too. I mean, look what Teddy Bridgewater did after he, learned from the Saints and from Breeze, and he didn't have the best season, but hey, he played way better than he did when he was on the Jets. Right. And so I think that we're going to see a little bit of that from Winston, but Winston has a cannon and
he's got the talent.
He has the talent. And I think that they've been able to kind of, mold his mental a little bit here. And if that's the scenario, I mean, watch out. Jameis Winston could be a top tier quarterback if winning. But yes, I think his upside could be limited because they're going to get cute and they're going to, throw the vulture. Don't get me
They're
started.
Not paying Taysom Hill to pass the ball.
Correct. And I mean, he's going to play every position known to man, and as we're on the Taysom Hill, I mean, his contract's completely voidable. Like everything is voidable. So that number, that 140 million is so inflated. Like people look at it and be like, I can't believe they paid Taysom Hill 140 million. No, it's really just a numbers game. And they did it to just shift money around, and it makes it look larger than it really is, because after 2021, I'm pretty sure there's a zero dead cap hit in 2022 and moving forward. So, I mean, fine. I'd make a player feel like he's going to hit 140 million too if I can void his contract in next year and be at zero dead cap hit too in order to make cap space. So I think it's going to be Winston starting, but you never know. I mean, Sean Payton has a hard on for Taysom Hill, and he's going to probably do whatever he's going to do.
This is true. This is true. Sean Payton do Sean Payton things, but Ryan Fitzpatrick will be doing Ryan Fitzpatrick things in Washington this year. He signed a 1-year $10-12 million deal depending upon incentives. But I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick, as long as he has the starting job, he's going to be a last round redraft selection for me. Like, he's going to be a target for low risk, high upside. I love this fit. He's 38 years old, but he was first in the NFL last season in completion percentage under pressure. Like, if you remember, do you remember the game where it was Miami versus the Raiders, and he had literally someone pulling out his face mask, pulling him to the side. He couldn't even see, he just chucks it up and completes the pass down the field. And he was number one. And
best no-look pass of the year.
It was a microcosmic example of how good Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Second best in the NFL in deep ball completion percentage, only behind your boy Nick Mullins in San Francisco. So with Terry,
so gross. That is so gross.
With Terry McLaurin, better than any Miami wide receiver, and Curtis Samuel, I also think better than any Miami wide receiver. Logan Thomas, and a safe pass catching option set of running backs of McKissick and Gibson. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick should be considered a borderline quarterback 1 every week if he holds the starting role down.
Dude, Fitzmagic is streaky as hell, and I love it. Like, he'll just throw like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns one game, and he'll win you a week. And then he'll turn around and throw like 190, 2 interceptions and 1 touchdown. But I really like what this Washington football team has done. They still don't have a name. Come on, guys, get it together. But
it's coming next year.
Yeah, it's coming. But I really like what they've done. I really do. I mean, what they've done on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. I mean, this team is going to be deadly. And you add someone like Ryan Fitzpatrick back there, because let's face it, they were a quarterback away from really competing. That defense was stout. They have a great running game right now.
They had the Bucs on the ropes.
They did have the Bucs on the ropes. I mean, if they beat the Bucs, I mean, look what the Bucs did. They just won the damn Super Bowl, and look how close that game was with Heineke, for crying out loud. And he played fantastic, but Ryan Fitzpatrick has a cannon, and he's not afraid to throw the ball. So I think that, you have a little bit of, I think Scary Terry takes a bump up. I think Curtis Samuel bumps up. I think especially for 2021, but Dynasty, we'll see what happens. But at least for 2021, both of them, I just shot up my rankings, and I'm extremely happy to see what Washington football team does. They have a great running game now. They have a good passing game. They're going to have a good set of receivers. Great on defense. So I think the arrow's pointing up for the WFT, or the WTF, as I like to say it, football team.
I agree. Their quarterback situation has a lot of depth, and I think that that's one of the strong suits of actually the Washington football. They've got Ryan Fitzpatrick. You mentioned Heineke, but they also tendered Kyle Allen. And Kyle Allen, he's a Ron Rivera guy. Well, I think I'll talk about him a little bit more later, but I really like the depth pieces that they have here, and they have options too. Like they can trade their 19th overall pick to fill any voids, or they can trade up if someone else is interested in Heineke or Allen themselves. So there's a lot of options. They're in a good position to go to the playoffs again, win the division.
That's not saying much for that division, but yeah. But yes, I mean, with Dak back, it's going to be a lot harder for them to just skate by with a losing record. But I'm excited to see what they do.
All right, next quarterback, Andy Dalton, 1-year deal.
What is this? 2005? Like here we're talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton starting quarterbacks again.
This is crazy. Phenomenal. I love it. So the quote out of Chicago from Andy Dalton is that I was told I would be the starter. That's the understanding. Andy Dalton is going to be the starting quarterback, and that's all I needed to hear. Dalton has been a quality back-end quarterback too his whole career. He's had a couple upside seasons where he's been a top 5 quarterback, but Allen Robinson signed his franchise tender, and rumors of Kenny Golladay, those have me salivating, just like, please, that would be so good for Andy Dalton. Not good for either Robinson.
I have way too much Mooney for that to happen. I don't even want that to happen. Don't even speak it to existence.
He's a cheap quarterback too, as the starter for Chicago. I mean, he was a playoff leading quarterback for the Bengals for about 7 years straight. So for the record, Dalton has sustained top wide receiver options such as AJ Green. It's better, like he's a better passer, overall better quarterback than either Nick Foles or Mitchell Trubisky. We have to see him as an upgrade.
That's debatable.
They need to get that Bengal stank off of him. I get it. Look, he's no Russell Wilson, but as long as he's not in a primetime game, because he always blows up, he always has the worst game of his career in primetime. As long as he's not on like Monday Night Football, the Red Rifle will bring the fire to Chicago's offense this season.
Yeah, and burn it down, because I don't like Andy Dalton. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I think he's like a shitty version of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like he's streaky, but in a bad way. Like he just never gets it done. I have zero faith in Andy Dalton. I mean, and I understand they had a horrible O-line last year inside Dallas with all the injuries, and they were injury riddled. But even with all those weapons, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Zeke Elliott, they weren't able to do anything with Andy Dalton back there, really. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that version of Andy Dalton than we did, with him and AJ in his prime. So I'm just not sold. Andy Dalton in this point in his career, I just don't think it has much left in the tank.
I think Andy Dalton is a top 24 quarterback this year.
Oh man. Oh, that's gross. I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna say 25-32.
Okay.
Timestamp it. Here we go.
All right.
It's on recording.
I love it. Tyrod Taylor signed for more money to be the backup in Houston. He signed a 1-year, $12.5 million deal to be the Houston Texans backup quarterback to Deshaun Watson.
Possible starter.
He signed for more money than presumptive starters Fitzpatrick and Dalton. Now, with that in mind, the Watson situation, we will address when we know more about it. It's certainly a developing situation. Seems pretty static. We keep getting tweets here and there about it, and we just don't know the truth at this point. And I don't think that's fair to either party to make that call. But the NFL is investigating at this point about harassment, possible assaults. So we will see, but I don't see it settling itself. Whatever's going on with Deshaun Watson settling itself anytime soon. Houston needs a competent quarterback. And if it wasn't for being stabbed in the lungs by a team doctor, Tyrod Taylor might have been the starter for the majority of the season last year, ahead of Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert needs to pay the doctor so much money. Like he broke the rookie record in touchdowns because that doctor stabbed him in the lungs. And so I'm not saying I hate to see, any damage or wish ill upon anybody, but that stabbing was like perfect for Justin Herbert in his career. And I'm sure any of the grievances that Tyrod Taylor had, leading up to now are probably gone, because Houston Texans just signed him for, like you said, $12.5 million. They just did Houston Texans things and overpaid for another quarterback. But hey, with the uncertainty that you have with Watson right now, I think you have to do what you have to do. So I'm just interested to see.
They're a lost organization that's just trying to throw anything against the wall and see if something sticks. Like, they signed almost 30 players in free agency, and I don't even know most of their names, to be honest. I've been doing fantasy football for many years now, and I don't know who some of these players are. And so I think that's what the GM, Nick Caserio, is trying to do. He's just like, okay, like, is Tyrod Taylor still got something left in the tank? Let's see.
What's the saying? If you throw enough shit against the wall, something eventually sticks. Like, that's the Houston Texans for you. It's been many years now too. So,
well, yeah, it's not looking good. Whatever situation is going on with Deshaun Watson, at least they have. Tyrod Taylor's not going to turn the ball over, but we've spent plenty of the offseason discussing how incompetent of an offense Tyrod Taylor would run. But yeah, he's the backup now. We'll move to another backup. Jacoby Brissette signs a 1-year deal in Miami. And this is necessary because Ryan Fitzmagic is no longer there. Brissett takes the backup job to Tua. Last season, Brissett was more of a goal line gadget player than anything. After Marlon Mack went down, Brissett had 3 rushing touchdowns on 17 attempts for the Colts. We know if Tua goes down, the boat won't sink to the bottom, it won't implode like I don't know if Tim Boyle had to take over for the Packers last year.
I can't believe we're even talking about Tim Boyle on this show tonight. Like, I saw this note, I'm like, really? I even put really Tim Boyle?
Yeah, so Tim Boyle's now the backup in Detroit, no longer on the Packers. But that's because Chase Daniel was released, and Boyle was, as I said, signed from Green Bay.
That's enough. We've talked enough about Boyle.
I researched this. We are giving Tim Boyle 30 seconds of our time. Hey, I'm
29 seconds wasted. But yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
So Tim Boyle had 13 rushes last year for -9 rushing yards. Needless to say, he won't be kneeling down much for Jared Goff this season in the Motor City. Okay, that was my 30 seconds. Mike Glennon for the New York Giants. Colt McCoy is out as the backup. Glennon is in. Glennon played 5 games for Jacksonville last year. 4 of those games he threw for over 200 yards. So pretty much Cam Newton, but in a third of the time span.
Can we fast forward to good players?
We need to do this. Give them their moments of fame. Deep cuts need to be just thrown out here. So Mike Glennon finished with 7 touchdowns, 5 picks, and not much else. He's solid insurance behind Daniel Jones. Here's a name for you here, Billy. Mitchell Trubisky.
I hate this one.
Like, I do too.
Go ahead.
So this has been one of the most disappointing signings of free agency, in my opinion. As much as I've ragged on Trubisky and I've said he's not a good real-life quarterback, he's got some skills like his rushing capabilities that can maybe make him fantasy relevant here and there. I don't think he's better. I don't think he's better than Andy Dalton, but I do think he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. He had the 3rd highest completion percentage last season when under pressure. Like, perhaps the pressure in Chicago was too much. Maybe he needed a hard reset like Jameis Winston.
Yeah, man, I'm just really surprised. Like, nobody else went out and got him. Like, Washington football team, New England. I mean,
he's stuck behind Josh Allen. He's not going anywhere.
No, he's not. That was an insurance signing, is what that was. That's, hey, we can make it all the way here. If we get Dak Prescott this year, what's going to happen, right? And at that point, they're a quarterback away from winning. But I mean, let's face it, Josh Allen ain't going anywhere. I mean, he's a stud, top 3 quarterback in the league right now, and if not, top 2. But I just think that, did Mitch Trubisky take the signing strictly because he's looking for a ring and, hey, maybe we can get it on this team, but I think he could have been a starter somewhere too. I really do. Like, shit, he could have gone to SF even, and possibly competed.
Garoppolo.
Yeah, he could have competed. And in that offense, he probably would have done something. I mean, Washington, he doesn't need to do much with that defense. And you have, weapons, and I don't like the signing. That's why I'm
thinking the hard reset has to be the narrative here, because you go somewhere to compete. Maybe it's because he's been competing and he just didn't want to have to fight it.
And it is a 1-year deal, and we're talking 2021, and we're talking reduced cap here. So a lot of that has part to play, and it's more of, hey, I'm just gonna essentially set a year out. I'm gonna redshirt it, right? And I'm gonna wait for 2022 when everyone has more money again. And that's what I think is happening here, because there's no way he's playing.
Yeah, I don't see him playing unless Josh Allen gets hurt.
Yeah.
Kyle Allen signed his tender with Washington. Can you blame Washington for stocking up on quarterback talent? I mean, Allen was originally a Ron Rivera prospect for Carolina, was 5th in deep ball completion percentage last season, and right ahead of Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that's inclusive of non-qualified passers, so like the couple quarterbacks with like 20 passes. But Allen only played 2.5 games before going on IR, but I mean, Rivera's always believed in his talent, and it's always good to have good quarterbacks on your team just in case someone gets hurt. But he'll be a name to watch along with Taylor Heineke and Ryan Fitzpatrick of who's going to duke it out for that starting spot.
Yeah, I'd say it's Fitzpatrick right now, and then
I would agree.
Heineke's competing, but I think it's pretty much Fitzpatrick's job to lose.
I agree. They're paying. You can look at the salaries, what money they're throwing at each of the quarterbacks to give you an idea.
Money talks.
All right, we're going to shift into the running backs. The first running back to sign was actually cut quite some time ago from the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Ingram signs a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Texans. Ingram will back up the split of David Johnson and Phillip Lindsey. That's what at least my prediction is going to be. The presence of all three running backs, though, seriously limits any potential upside for any of these players. Even if an injury occurs, it's still going to be a 2-headed monster instead of a 3. I expect Ingram to not even make the team. This is just, I'm throwing it out there. I don't even think he's going to make the team. He's 30-something years old. He's not a pass catcher. David Johnson looked like a capable pass catcher and runner last year. And then just today, or yesterday, the Houston Texans signed Phillip Lindsey for more money than Mark Ingram. So I think Mark Ingram is done, and even this early signing is not going to matter much come fall.
Yeah, dead cap, it's only $500,000. So I think that's a fairly good projection, and I think it's really I think we're gonna see in camp what's gonna happen. But I would agree. I don't think he makes his team either, unless David Johnson trade happens.
We'll see. We'll see. They did sign Phillip Lindsey, so maybe the cap hit for David Johnson is going to be significantly reduced. So, all right, another running back, Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers.
You're happy about this one.
Am I ever? This signing puts Aaron Jones upward into safe RB5 to RB7 overall category and should be considered, in my opinion, a first-round pick in one quarterback, 12-team leagues going into next season. He can catch. He can rush. Jamal Williams is gone. A.J. Dillon didn't show enough his rookie year for me to be overly concerned about having more of a role than Jamal Williams did. This is a commitment by the Packers to one of their most dynamic players. I love his fantasy value. Jones was 9th in running back targets with 62 in just 14 games. Jamal Williams had 35 targets. So even if he gets half of that, we're talking almost 80 targets, makes him a top 3 running back in the pass catching category. Maybe even number 1 if Kamara has a down season. I think Aaron
Kamara's
Jones
a lot of Brady every year.
He's a lot. Yeah, he is, unless Taysom Hill is the quarterback.
Get out of here. Get out of here with that crap.
But Aaron Jones, I think it's within the range of outcomes that Aaron Jones is the running back 1 overall in 2021.
It's not out of the question. And he's the player that, looking at FFPC drafts here, he has shot up the most in FFPC drafts in best ball leagues right now. And everyone was taking AJ Dillon in round 4. And you and I talked about this multiple weeks ago. It's way too early, especially in February. And I know it's February. I'm doing best ball drafts. I'm an addict. But hey, that's way too early for a player you have no idea what's going to happen for. I mean, in February drafts, you got to play a little more conservative. Yes, you can take gambles, but at the same time, you have to go with some things that you know are going to succeed. And okay, you can take a risk and say, hey, he could be a potential starter for the Green Bay Packers here. But we knew they wanted to bring back Aaron Jones, just a matter of if they were going to be able to do it. Right. And both sides mutually wanted to get the deal done. It was just a matter of money. And as soon as that happened, AJ Dillon now has gone from round 4 in FFPC down to round 11. I just saw him go for in this last draft. And Aaron Jones counteractively went from round 3 to round 1, and rightfully so. And I agree with you. Aaron Jones has the potential to be number 1. I'm going to put him more in that round, like that 3rd to 6th running back spot on a safe off its fly off the top of my head right now. But I think AJ Dillon now is backseat, Tony Pollard kind of section where he has upside, but he's going to be playing second fiddle.
And he's not a pass catcher. So my 17 additional targets is conservative unless the Packers add another running back, which is within the range, which is a possibility too. Jamal Williams did both. He was a solid rusher and he could catch passes. So we'll see if the Packers add another dimension.
I think that work goes directly to Aaron Jones, and that's why I think that he gets that bump in rankings here, because all that passing work that Williams took is now going to Aaron Jones, because AJ Dillon can't catch the ball with his frog legs. I mean, he's gonna maybe be a short yardage back, a breather, change of pace back for Aaron Jones, but I don't see him coming in on passing downs whatsoever. Especially, do you want a second year playing blocking for Aaron Rodgers? No, I don't think so. He's gonna want Aaron Jones there in that backfield protecting him during blitzes and third downs.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Green Bay Packer fan, having Aaron Jones return. It's going to be all good. Contend for another Super Bowl. All right, Billy, tell us about your boy Kyle Juszczyk. He re-signed 5 years, $27 million. How do you feel?
I love it, man. Juszczyk's a beast. This is the Niners game. It's the ground and pound game. It's the versatility that Juszczyk can bring. I mean, he's actually can catch the ball for a fullback. And I mean, his blocking is just second to none as a fullback. The position is almost obsolete in the NFL. So when I say that, there's not a lot to compare it to, but I'm really happy they're bringing him back. But I think what this does, if anything, it reiterates the ground and pound that we've been doing. I'm very high on Mostert now. I'm very high on Jeff Wilson, saying that Juszczyk is back, because I think this is a dedication to the run game for the Niners. And I think it speaks to the lack of confidence that we have in Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's all I needed to hear. Okay, another running back, Carlos Hyde, re-signs with Jacksonville. Remember, a couple years ago, he was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars from the Cleveland Browns after the emergence of Nick Chubb. Carlos Hyde reunites in Jacksonville with former head coach Urban Meyer, who was his college coach at Ohio State. Hyde has been surprisingly useful like the past 2 seasons. And we thought he was dust about 2 years ago. He was averaging like 3.3 yards per carry. Now he's 30 years old, but he's been averaging 4.4 yards per carry each of the past 2 seasons. And that's on 320 carries. It's not like he's getting, 15 carries or 30 carries or whatever. No, he's had on average 160 carries over the last 2 years. I expect Hyde to play second fiddle to James Robinson. Like, let's not play, but I also expect the Jags to run the ball more. So Hyde's still going to get carries. And Hyde doesn't look like he's lost his step. If anything, he looks like he's done better the last couple of years. So I think Hyde is worth a late round flyer in deep leagues. And if anything happens to James Robinson, we saw James Robinson go down during his rookie year. We'll have the confidence that Urban Meyer isn't afraid to give Carlos Hyde a bigger workload. Like, it's going to be the Carlos Hyde show if anything happens to James Robinson. I think this is a pure handcuff.
Yeah, it is a handcuff, but it's also, I think it reiterates the confidence that they have in James Robinson. There was a lot of scuttle that, hey, they're going to bring in competition. Mm-hmm. But I really like this signing actually for as a James Robinson owner, because it shows confidence in the young back. Because if they really were going to bring someone to compete, they would have, brought in someone like a Lindsay or somebody else of that magnitude. But to bring in Carlos Hyde, it shows that he's strictly a complimentary piece. and that they're going to be able to rely on Robinson and just use Carlos Hyde as a change of pace back, and give him a little bit of fresh air, and give him a little bit of a break in between plays. And so I'm really happy here about the signing for James Robinson's value.
And keeping him healthy. Like, James Robinson is useless if he's not out there. And we saw him get 80-something% of touches from the running back position for Jacksonville. If he can go down to even 65-70%, but still be healthy for the whole year, I think that's super valuable too. So,
and this is going to be a new and improved team. New coach. You have a franchise quarterback here that's going to pop up. That's a generational talent. Essentially like an Andrew Luck type talent coming out of college. So I think the arrow's pointing up for Jacksonville, and they've also been pretty active in free agency as well on the defense side of the ball. So I like what they've done here, and they haven't gone out and really spent a ton of money. But I think that the moves that they've made are to better this team, and it really hasn't taken much away from the players that we are expecting to be at least top performers at their positions.
Well, another back that we expect to be a handcuff that signed a 2-year deal, Devante Booker, has signed with the Giants.
Booker now?
Yes, we got to talk about Devante Booker. After Saquon went down last season, the Giants looked SOL in the running back room. Look, we remember the Dion Lewis. We remember the Wayne Gallman being useful until Jason Garrett brought in his old Dallas buddy.
Gallman was good. I liked Gallman.
Remember Alfred Morris was getting carries like, what?
Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah, Devonta Freeman proved to be useless for the Giants. So Booker had 93 carries for 400-plus yards on 4.5 yards per carry clip last year for the Raiders, 17 receptions. So he'll be a change of pace back. A solid insurance policy if something happens to Saquon again.
Yeah, he can also hand waters to the running backs on the team, so
he's got that going for him. All right, Malcolm Brown, we'll keep the pace going. He signs with Miami as a running back depth piece behind Myles Gaskin, competing with Salvon Ahmed for background touches. Brown had 419 rushing yards on just about 100 carries, 5 rushing touchdowns for the Rams last year. He's never been a special player, but always highly sought after. We remember a couple of years ago, the Detroit Lions signed him, and then the Rams had the opportunity to match, and they did match him. I don't think Miami's done addressing the running back position, but Malcolm Brown gives them a veteran presence that's reliable pass catcher, reliable blocking. He's been around the block, and he can be trusted in that backfield.
It makes me it's very similar to James Robinson piece. It actually, I think, kind of reiterates confidence inside their young back. I think Gaskins played well. He looked good. You remember like week 2 when I said, hey, I was watching the film and there's this kid out of Miami and he looks fantastic, but I don't know if it's just, a 1-week wonder or if they're actually going to use him, because if they let Howard sit on the bench and they stop using and they don't use Breida, I think this kid could be something. And I loved watching his tape and he looked fantastic those first few weeks. And I think that this Malcolm Brown signing shows confidence with Gaskins, similar to what I just said about James Robinson. So yes, they may address it, but I don't think they're going to spend, any high draft capital on it. I don't think they're going to spend a lot of money in the position. So I think that they're going to be smart here and they're going to use those high draft picks on positions like wide receiver like they need, or I know they just brought in, Fuller, but I still think that position still needs to be addressed. And I still think that they can add other pieces to this offense as well. But I think that the Malcolm Brown signing is good for Gaskin's value.
Another backup running back signed as well, Jamal Williams in Detroit. Bite a kneecap off, why don't you? I both love and hate this for Jamal Williams, because Williams, he'll share the load with DeAndre Swift, whom Dan Campbell, the head coach, has lauded time and again, and the offensive coordinators have all spoken so highly of DeAndre Swift. I still expect Jamal Williams to get 7 to 10 carries and 3 to 4 targets. He may be a flex appeal even with DeAndre Swift having a big opportunity here. Even if Swift gets injured, though, we know what Jamal Williams can do in a full role. And the Lions, I don't know what kind of trust they can have in any wide receiver. I anticipate they may draft one, but this is a death blow to Kerryon Johnson. That's who it kills.
Yeah, and man, I was listening to Mike Dempsey the other day, and he was talking, and it hit home as soon as I saw the signing. I was like, man, he hit a hammer on the nail. And he said Jamal Williams is the type of player that no matter where he's going to sign, you're going to be like, oh, that kind of sucks for the running back one there. Yep. And it happened, and I was like, oh, man, that sucks for Swift. And so I was just like, I immediately went back to that in my head, and I was like, man, he was dead on because it was right. Like, yeah, you're right.
Swift may still be a running back.
He's still going to be fantastic. But, I mean, you're still going to have – it's just – I mean, look like Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams. Aaron Jones would come in and spell him. He had to overcome
that.
Yeah, Aaron Jones would come in, and he would just take an entire series from him. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, Aaron Jones missed out on an entire series and maybe a touchdown, or he missed out on 4 catches and 30 yards. And that should have been to, Aaron Jones as the running back one, but no, it went to Jamal Williams. So I think that's the same kind of situation we're going to see here in Detroit. He's going to come in and spell him. The ball's going to move. They're going to keep him on the field, and Swift's going to lose a series. And that's the kind of things that's going to knock him down just a peg. And you do that enough times, and you go from, top 10 running back to running back 13, 14, and you're not as effective.
And then he's not bringing the value that you drafted for.
Correct. And I still think that he's his talent's up there. I still think his opportunities up there. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that Jamal Williams is going to be a vulture, is what I'm saying.
He is. He's a beautiful vulture. Marlon Mack resigns in Indy, Billy. Mack resigns. He resigns for the Colts. This is like the most surprising move this offseason. I anticipated he was gone to leave, to have a better chance, to have a bigger role. I know the Achilles injuries are always difficult to come back from, but maybe it's that Mack seems to believe he's unfinished business in Indy. I mean, let's look at Marlon Mack and what he's done. He finished 10th in rushing yards in 2019, 16th in 2018, both at least 900 yards rushing. The running back room is full in Indy. Like, Jonathan Taylor was drafted last year. Nyheim Hines has a very defined role. Jordan Wilkins also gobbled up a lot of touches last year. It's hard to see how Marlon Mack returning to Indianapolis helps any of these running backs in their fantasy outlook. It makes me hesitant to put Taylor as a first-round redraft pick for next season.
Oh, I still have Taylor as a first-round pick. I'm not too concerned with the Marlon Mack signing. I mean, as well as Marlon Mack played in the beginning before getting hurt, and as good of a year he had in 2019 when he rushed for over 1,000 yards, I think this is more of them taking care of a player who got injured, bringing him back when teams are having salary cap issues, and signing a 1-year deal to where maybe he starts the year on PUP. Maybe he starts the year, sitting for the first few weeks to really get healthy. And then they have him there as insurance for Taylor if the time is needed. So for me, it's looked at more as a defensive play from the Colts rather than saying, hey, we're going to utilize this guy a lot. Because let's face it, you said it yourself, Achilles injuries are very hard to get over. I can't think of the top of my head. Maybe Arian Foster, year one back from his Achilles that really had performed.
Foreman.
Yeah, fell off, right? So most players go the Devante Foreman route. Very few players, if any, have had success after an Achilles tear. So
Emanuel Sanders.
Different position.
It's true. The running back, yeah.
But I think that this is more of them bringing him in as insurance and letting him rest and really heal up. And then from there, down the road, if needed, hey, we can utilize another back that knows the system, that isn't going to have to relearn everything, and bring him in and really give ourselves, a little bit of insurance in the backfield.
Yeah, it was a surprising move, at least on when I saw Marlon Mack. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, this doesn't help. But yeah, he's an insurance policy. I don't think he'll overtake Jonathan Taylor at all. I don't want to speak that into existence. Kenyon Drake, though, signs a 2-year, $11 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders!
I hate this signing for both of them. Really.
So, speaking of surprising moves, yes, Drake signs with the Raiders, and this is damning for both Drake and Josh Jacobs' fantasy values. I made a Drake and Josh reference right there. Drake,
have you seen the memes?
I have.
They're gold. I love it.
So good. Kenyon Drake, he's going to get the third down work, but also he's capable of siphoning off carries from Josh Jacobs. And this is all in light of Devante Booker leaving, Jacobs being charged with a traffic violation after we thought it was a DUI in January. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacobs faces a short suspension due to violations of the player code of conduct. But with Devante Booker gone, I think the Raiders looked themselves in the mirror and said, Josh Jacobs isn't what we hoped he would turn into.
I mean, he wasn't ever a first round talent, but the Raiders went out and did it anyways, right? But I think he's a decent back. I don't think he's a great back.
I mean, he couldn't even beat out Damian Harris.
Yeah, it's
in Bama.
Yeah, Damian Harris actually looked pretty damn good last year, but
I know that's why I have him in a lot of leagues.
But I think this is a balance. This is a yin and yang signing is what I look at it as. Hey, we don't have to fully rely on Josh Jacobs here. Kenyon Drake has shown that he's more of a second half player. It's kind of been his MO, right? I only really show up weeks 10 through 16. But I think that Drake's a better pass catcher. And Josh Jacobs, we've seen they really haven't fully, been 100% given him the full pass catching ability or pass catching role here. So I think this is to spell him on, 1-2 downs here and there, but also primarily as the third down back here inside this offense.
Well, and the signing of Theo Riddick back to the Raiders, as if we didn't need another reason to doubt the pass catching role of Josh Jacobs, and sign Drake and sign Riddick. Okay. Okay. Chris Carson just today signed a 2-year, $14 million deal with Seattle. So he re-signs with Seattle. I think this is a great signing for his fantasy value. I can't think of a better landing spot in a run-first offense, coach's familiarity, coach's confidence. Carson's been a top 20 PPR back the last 3 seasons, and that's despite missing at least one game in each of those seasons. Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas, Alex Collins, sure, they'll get a couple carries sprinkled in here and there. I know that you've been a Rashad Penny believer for some time, but I'm just not convinced. And I don't think they pose a serious threat to keep Carson from being an RB2 with RB1 upside.
No, I think that that pretty much sealed the deal in the last hopes I had for Penny. Carson's looked good. And yeah, he has his ups and down times in that offense, but that entire offense does as well. I just think that you could have given me the name of 5 teams, and I would not have. I should say, if you would have asked me to name 5 teams, I would not have guessed Seattle. Quite frankly, I thought he was gone.
I thought so too.
After they didn't tag him, I thought, hey, writing on the wall, they're probably going to address in the draft.
Maybe Buffalo, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe
I thought
Miami.
It was Buffalo. I really did. I would have guessed Buffalo first pick, and it's great for his value. It sucks for my Rashad Penny shares in Dynasty, but hey, shit happens, and we're on to the next. But hey, it's great for Chris Carson, and I think it's great for this offense. I hate it as a Niner fan, but hey, whatever.
Because Chris Carson is #good at football.
Yeah, he is actually.
Phillip Lindsey, also someone who's #good at football, signed a 1-year, just over $3 million deal with the Houston Texans today. He was originally tendered by Denver, but
Houston, man.
Yeah, I told you, they're just signing anybody.
They're just all over the place.
You know what? I should just send them a blind resume and say, hey, I can play some football. I know a little bit about it. You want to sign me as a free agent? Because I can do something for you. I can be a test dummy. They'll pay me $500,000. That's fine. That'll get the fanless, bigger streaming platforms, whatever. So anyways, Phillip Lindsey signs a $3 million 1-year deal, originally tendered. He convinced the Broncos to rescind the tender and allow him to be a free agent. Lindsey had gone undrafted, and it was an original round tender to an undrafted player. So it was virtually nothing. They were paying him pennies. And so he was like, look, I don't want, can you just rescind the tender, please, so that I can get paid. And so he's getting paid. And I expect Lindsey to be the 1B to David Johnson, but it's very possible that Lindsey eventually takes over the 1A scenario here. Lindsey's never averaged less than yet 4.3 yards per carry in a season, and he's rushed for over 1,000 yards twice. The first 2 seasons, he had an injury-riddled season last year. And the Broncos brought in Melvin Gordon, but I think that Lindsey is talented. I think that he has an opportunity to get some carries. And you never know what Houston's going to do because their roster is just at what sticks. And I think Phillip Lindsey has a good chance of sticking.
Man, do you remember last year we talked about how we did not like this Melvin Gordon signing in
Yep.
Denver? And I don't like the fact that they let Lindsey walk and the fact that they kept Melvin Gordon here. Lindsey has been a trooper. I mean, Lindsey has been just like the little engine that could. And he's
it's
local
like the Broncos
to Denver.
hate him.
Yeah, it's like he's a local kid. He came up, he showed up, he played, he did well.
He plays tough.
He plays tough.
He got kicked out of one of the games because he punched another guy in the pile. Like, yeah, all right, dude.
I have mad respect for Phillip Lindsey, and I like what he's done. So I'm glad he got paid. It sucks that he's with Houston. It really does. But
I was about to say friend of the podcast, Phillip Lindsey.
Yeah,
you can be our friend, Phillip Lindsey.
Yeah, yeah. So I just think that I don't really like where he landed, but good for him for getting paid because I mean Denver was just taking advantage of the situation, and I do have a question for you. Is it hashtag Royce Free Me time now with I don't care about Mike Boone. Mike Boone does nothing.
Hashtag Mike Boone.
No, it's not Mike Boone. Like that's just I think just there to be there because let's face it, Melvin Gordon could still be suspended for 4 games.
Booner.
So Melvin Gordon could still be suspended 4 games because of DUI, and then it's Royce Freeman time with Mike Boone as a second.
I think
is that wishful thinking for my 20 dynasty leagues at 18 have Royce Freeman?
I think so.
What happened, man? He was so good in college.
Well, he went to the Broncos. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Okay, deep cut of the week time, Billy. This week's deep cut of the week is brought to you by Grocery Outlet Bargain Market.
And we don't have a soundboard. Somebody say Grocery Outlet Bargain Market. Your turn.
I love it. This is great. This week's deep cut of the week, I've been giving hints on Twitter, and I've been spilling it in different podcasts throughout the offseason. This week's deep cut is tight end Tyler Conklin.
I knew it before I even read it. I saw your deep cut of the week, and I was like, oh, it's going to be Tyler Conklin.
Of the Minnesota Vikings, Conklin rises to relevance now that Kyle Rudolph is cut and signed with the New York Giants. During the final 4 weeks of the 2020 season, Conklin had more targets than either Adam Thielen or Irv Smith Jr., and he played fewer snaps than either of those players. In fact, Conklin had a 14% target share of Kirk Cousins' passes. And as for his profile, Conklin 6'3", 254, runs a 4.8, was drafted in the 5th round, so he has at least draft capital. Look, it's nothing impressive. He had a 27.8% college dominator rating, though, which is pretty good, and a 126.5 burst score, 11.36 agility score. Now, I list all of these because they're all better than Irv Smith. Like, he has better measurables than Irv Smith, and he's bigger and more solid. Like, he weighs more and he's taller, and he's faster than Irv Smith. As with most tight end prospects, Robert Tunyan, for instance, they take a few years to blossom, and Conklin seems to have earned the trust of Kirk Cousins as the season came to a close. Don't be surprised if Conklin is the tight end you want in Minnesota and not necessarily Irv Smith. Though, to be fair, I think that Irv Smith is greater than Jay Sternberger, just with this analogy. So go get Conklin in your fantasy leagues.
I'm not going to bash it because Bradley's the tight end whisperer over here, and he told me about Robert Tunyan preseason last year, and I didn't listen, and I only owned him in one league. And now I see what happened, and I saw after, and he had been talking about Robert Tunyan the entire year, preseason, through camp, everything, and talked about Jay Sternberger. So I'm not gonna doubt you here, Bradley. I will have faith in the Tyler Conklin here.
Go get him. I will know you have faith when you go get him.
I'm not sending you trade offers because you own him in every league we're in.
And
you can keep him. You can keep him.
That's fair.
But I will have faith in your tight end whisperer's abilities here.
Okay, we got to keep going with wide receivers. We're already over an hour, but we're gonna.
It's a long podcast, but hey, let's do it.
We're doing great. I've got the energy. You've got the energy. It's all good.
I still have wine. We're good.
I've got water and wine. There we go.
He just ran out of Moscow mules, people.
This is true. Chris Godwin kicks off our wide receiver free agency section. Godwin was franchise tagged, short and sweet. This keeps the band back together. This was the goal. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. We'll see what happens with Antonio Brown. They brought back Gronk. So bring the band back together, make another run at it, and that's the plan.
Yeah, I'm excited he's back. I really am.
Okay. Allen Robinson, also franchise tagged. The Bears were never going to let Robinson go. They signed Dalton. Dalton has sustained AJ Green through ridiculous target share. That's how he was sustained, and I anticipate the same moving forward. As long as Robinson is the only wide receiver, I think it's more than a 25% target share, and Robinson had at least a 25% target share last year. So I see that percentage going up even. So it's going to be Darnell Mooney. It's going to be Allen Robinson. There's been trade rumors about Anthony Miller. So I hope Miller gets traded just so that frees up some Mooney, but also because Allen Robinson, he could be, I mean, he was wide receiver 9 last year, but I think he could be in the upper echelon just based on the target share.
It also could be more Cole Kmet too. And Kmet actually came on pretty hot late in the season. So I have a lot of high hopes for Kmet. I have a lot of high hopes for Darnell Mooney. I did not foresee Anthony Miller sticking along here much longer. I'm happy to see it happening sooner than I imagined if he does get traded here in 2021. But I don't, I just said about I'm not a big Andy Dalton fan, but I don't think that he can be much worse than what we had there last year.
He will get the ball to his receiver better than Mitchell Trubisky.
Or as you said, he will be useful.
He will be useful. I'll take a useful Andy Dalton. We spoke about Nelson Agler a few minutes ago. Agler signed a 2-year, $26 million deal with the Patriots. And look, Agler showed enough during his 1-year stint with the Raiders. And
Didn't show $26 million enough.
Okay. I think he deserved the deal, and the Patriots needed help.
You think he deserved $26 million in 2 years?
I think the Patriots are willing to pay him that, and that's what he's worth. So yes.
Juju just signed for 8.
Yeah, well, Juju, we all know that Juju
took a discount.
He took a big discount.
But you think he would have taken a discount had he had 13 on the table?
Kenny Golladay is asking for 18.5, which maybe is why he's not getting signed.
Yeah, that's definitely why he's not getting signed. But okay, I don't see any reports out there saying that Juju is offered $13 million a year.
I mean, Agler. He immediately steps into competing for the number 1 wide receiver role in an ambiguous, low-volume pass offense, vying for targets with maybe Edelman will be back, but definitely Harry.
No, this is 12 personnel all day. They're going back to the Gronk and Hernandez schemes. They're going to run 12 personnel. They're going to just target Henry. They're going to target Jonnu. Wide receiver is irrelevant in this offense. We've already talked about Cam Newton not being able to pass the ball. They
need speed burners, and I think Nelson Agler.
They're going to run down the field as decoys. They're going to be decoys.
That's the whole point. You need a $13 million decoy.
That's so expensive. Like, for Christ's sake, sign Fuller,
sign Corey Davis.
Sign Corey Davis. Nelson Agler for $13 million a year. The Patriots, they're just signing to sign at this point.
They've got money to burn. So
they have money to burn. They did it the wrong way, but they have money to burn.
I sent out a poll on Twitter. I was like, so have the Patriots done enough? And this was after they had signed Jonnu and they had signed Hunter Henry and they had signed Agler. This was after all of the big waves. And 70% of respondents said no.
Yeah, you should have had a yes, no, hell no, because they would have been 80% hell no. Because it's like these signings that they've spent more money on has-beens or I should say never-beens. And
Agler. You just keep beating this guy.
Assholar. We've talked about it for the last year. Yes, he came on hot last year, but look who else was. They had nobody else. I mean, Ruggs, your rookie year, this
is true.
He's John Ross 2.0. Like, come on, there's nothing. I mean, he was there by default, and that's why he did well. They had nobody else to throw to outside Darren Waller.
Well, wait a minute. He's going from a tight end pass heavy offense
to a super tight end pass heavy offense now, because
so he will definitely thrive. He will definitely thrive. $13 million a year.
So
Can I
does
get
this
like
mean-
one of that?
So question, does this mean that N'Keal Harry's not going to be a thing?
N'Keal Harry's done. N'Keal Harry is as burnt as the toast that my daughters try to make. Yeah, he's done. So is Edelman. Bourne, I think, is going to be an interesting red zone target. Jacoby Myers, I like his talent too. So I think it's mostly going to be Nelson Agler and Jacoby Myers as your wide receivers here. Edelman's done. Harry, they're getting trade offers, and I would trade him away. Give him a fresh start.
I think it's great for him if they traded him away. It would be
Mhm.
he actually was a great prospect coming out of college. I just think he fell into an offense. It wasn't a good fit for
Year one. He just didn't have the connection with Brady.
He got hurt.
Year two, it's Cam Newton.
He got hurt year one
That's
too.
true.
And and Brady's, you know how Brady is. You run the wrong route and you're going to get benched.
You're a rookie. I mean, we should have learned not to draft Keyshawn Vaughn, but I drafted too much Keyshawn Vaughn last
I
year.
didn't draft any. Remember, everybody was making fun of me because I was drafting Rojo. I'm like, they're not going to trust Vaughn.
It's true. All right. Speaking of good picks, you got the floor here, Billy. Corey Davis. Talk to me about Corey Davis.
I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Here, 1 second.
Oh, God.
Because this is all that matters. Where's the share screen? And application window, Chrome tabs, Twitter, and we're going to share it. Can you see it? Yes. That's Corey Davis right there. That's right. That's the Pope holding Corey Davis because that's what he means to me. I have been a truther since college, and I am not going to let him die ever. Corey Davis is here to stay. I don't care if he's a Jet. The Jets suck, but Corey Davis does not.
Oh, Billy.
The Pope has blessed this move, and Corey Davis is going to be a stud. That's what happens.
All right, that's all we need. Kendrick Bourne also to the Patriots. Any other comments you want to make about Kendrick Bourne and the Patriots?
Yeah, he's not going to have the year Corey Davis is going to have.
Okay. John Ross signs a 1-year deal with the New York Giants. I think this is a low-risk, high-upside signing. Ross has a lot of measurable talents, but being healthy and getting opportunity, being stuck behind talented receivers. I mean, target hogs of A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd really sucked that away, and the injuries hurt too. So we'll see if the Giants end up being the winners of the Kenny Golladay sweepstakes, but I think this is
the night.
We'll see. So John Ross 1-year deal to the New York Giants. Marvin Jones.
You know who else had a 1-year deal from the New York Giants was Corey Coleman.
That's true. Although, didn't he either get injured or cut or something happened with Corey Coleman? I don't know.
A lot happened with Corey Coleman.
Okay. Back to Marvin. We need to refocus, Billy.
Yeah. Okay.
Marvin Jones. We're going to be here until I need to
You're
wake up.
You're going to be like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for you. It's 10, 12 for me. It's late for Bradley.
We're doing good.
Yeah.
Marvin Jones, 2 years, $14.5 million. You said Jacksonville didn't spend a lot. They did spend a little bit. And Marvin Jones, I think he's a valuable piece for a very young wide receiver core. Jones finished as wide receiver 18 overall in Detroit last season. He had plenty left in the tank, 76 for 978 and 9 touchdowns. I think he can replicate pretty close to that with Trevor Lawrence opposite DJ Chark, kept honest by Laviska Shenault. I think this offense, as you mentioned earlier, Billy, is going to be a lot more competent. And I think Marvin Jones is a veteran presence that will definitely help mentor and can be a trusted receiver for a young quarterback.
See, this is the player I thought was going to go to the Patriots, not Nelson Agler. I really thought that Marvin Jones was going to go there. And I would rather have Marvin Jones over Nelson Agler at $13 million a year.
Of course.
And you just got him for what, 7.25? 7.25? Yeah. Good job, Bill Belichick.
Well, John Brown signed with the Raiders, and that fills the void left by Agler. I love this signing from a team building perspective. Not even from a fantasy perspective. The Raiders needed to replace Agler. He had a solid season, I thought. But now the Raiders turn to Brown, who's shown he's still a speedy, quality veteran. He went 38 for 458 and 3, not 9 games. So he did have some injuries last season. But the Raiders have a very young, talented wide receiver core. You mentioned Ruggs, but also Brian Edwards is there. They could use some mentoring. And I feel like they just need to get that lift off the ground. And John Brown is a speedy, savvy, veteran receiver. He knows how to get open. And I think that mentoring is the right role for Brown on this Raiders team.
Yeah, it's definitely a mentoring role, I think. I mean, he only played 9 games last year. He only started 7. And he's fast, and Ruggs is fast. I think this is more to open up the field for Darren Waller, quite frankly.
Yep.
Let them both streak and throw it across the middle. And Kenyon Drake off in the flat. So I think this is going to open up the offense. I really do. But
so are you buying Derek Carr?
No, I didn't say that. I mean, second quarterback, sure, but I'm not drafting him as a first quarterback. 2 QB leagues, he's a decent quarterback too. I mean, I think the talent's there. I'm just not super happy with everything else surrounding him.
Okay, Manny Sanders. So Emanuel Sanders was cut from the Saints, and the Bills cut Brown, and so there was an open void in Buffalo. It seems like it just rearranging all the wide receivers in the different contracts and different teams, but there's a hole in that offense. I still believe in the ascension of Gabriel Davis, but we have to temper the expectations of Davis's fantasy output like right off the bat. If anything, I see like Davis as a buy low temporarily at the right price if in light of the Sanders signing. So I don't see Sanders as more than the 4th wide receiver on this team at this stage of his career, but he'll eat into targets, even though really I think Josh Allen can sustain Beasley and Diggs and Gabriel Davis by the end of the season.
Yeah, I was actually kind of sad to see this happen because I was really having high hopes for Gabriel Davis. It's just going to eat into it. It's just going to delay the inevitable, but I still think that Gabriel Davis is number 2.
Speaking of washed up wide receivers, Arizona took a flyer on AJ Green. This is in anticipation of Larry Fitzgerald announcing his retirement. We expect that it's short, it'll happen shortly. We thought maybe Fitz would retire last season, but I think this signing signals the end of the Fitzgerald era in Arizona. I think AJ Green is a good fit in Arizona.
I do too.
Green simply didn't have a connection with Joe Burrow, despite having the 32nd most targets for a wide receiver in the NFL. He had over 100 targets. So it was
ugly.
It was ugly. He and Judy were the only players in 2020 with more than 100 targets, but less than
Judy
50%.
Sucks though. Like at least AJ Green was good at one point.
And I asked Pro Football Reference this question. They were the ones who got back to me. So this is a pricey flyer, but perhaps Green can mentor like the likes of the speedy Andy Isabella to blossom into something. Like I still think AJ Green has something to offer. I'm not sure if it'll be fantasy relevant though.
This is a good fit. It really is though. Like this offense is a high-powered offense.
They're going to pass the ball. They run 3-4 wide receiver sets all the time.
Yeah, I really do. I had like no interest in drafting AJ Green. Even it was even like in round like 18, 19 in FFPC. And I'm like, I still don't want to pull the trigger, but I'm more willing to pull the trigger now that he's in Arizona. And I think you're absolutely right. It sealed the deal here on our boy being retired here in Arizona. But it really also looks at it and say, like, I had a lot of February shares of, wow, I'm blanking on his name right now. Wow, I'm blanking. Holy crap.
Which team, Billy?
Arizona here. Supposed to be
Christian
number 2.
Kirk.
Thank you. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
I don't know.
It's the wine, but it's he's been going in like around like 20, 18, 19. And like for me, that was like a chance I'm willing to take here on a wide receiver 6-7 in a best ball
for sure
format. Especially seeing,
and we've seen blow up games from Christian Kirk. So
we have seen blow up games from Christian Kirk, and so I thought, with the retirement here with Fitzgerald, that hey, it was a possibility that it finally could be a Christian Kirk season. It could be him, still playing second fiddle here to DeAndre Hopkins. But hey, Christian Kirk could have came. But with AJ Green signing now, I'm not as confident in my round 20 Christian Kirk shares.
Oops.
Yeah, it happens. That's what I get for drafting in February.
Well, Curtis Samuel, though, signs with the Washington football team. We mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the podcast with the Ryan Fitzpatrick bit, but Samuel joins his college teammate Terry McLaurin, 3 years, $34.5 million. Curtis Samuel is going to be the number 2 option. Samuel finishes wide receiver 23. I was surprised to actually find that out. He finishes wide receiver 23 in PPR due to 97 targets and 41 rushes back in 2020 with Carolina. He rejoins former Carolina coach Ron Rivera, his former head coach who drafted him, and looks to build on, I think, an underrated 2020, very much under the radar. Samuel finished with over 1,000 all-purpose yards, 5 total touchdowns, so it wasn't like his stats were inflated by touchdowns. I expect Samuel to operate opposite McLaurin as the number 2, and this crushes Cam Sims truthers.
Yeah, and I remember the text you sent me. You said, "Hey, who's the wide receiver 2 here in Washington?" I said he's not yet rostered, but as of right now, it's Sims. But I know you're really big on Curtis Samuel. I've never really been a big Curtis Samuel guy, and I think that his stats were a little inflated last year. And hear me out. So we had Christian McCaffrey injured, and then we had Mike Davis, who was not utilized in the same fashion that he was utilized when he was a top 3, top 5 running back in the beginning of the year. Because what happened? Curtis Samuel started getting rushing attempts, and they started spreading the ball around a little bit more. So Curtis Samuel had up to 7 rushing attempts in some games here in 2020. He's not going to get that type of carries here in the Washington football
I don't think
team.
he'll get 41, but 30? I think he could get 30.
I don't think so with Gibson.
2 rushes a game. I think they could give 2 rushes a game to Curtis Samuel.
Okay, 30. Okay, yes, maybe. I just think that a lot of his numbers are inflated. I mean, he had 52 rushing yards that game that he had 7 attempts. That was week 16, 2020 here. And so
sure, I'll push back though. I'll grant you the CMC and the Mike Davis narrative for sure. I'll push back though because Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore both had big seasons too, and they were both top 25 wide receivers or so. 30
they did, but their
receivers.
defense was shit, and so they're constantly playing catch up. Washington football team has a good defense.
It's true.
So hear me out. They're not going to be throwing the amount of volume or playing from behind as
Ryan
much.
Fitzpatrick is going to throw for volume. Okay, let's not play.
but the narrative is changing here. When you have a solid defense, you're not going to be throwing the ball as much. You don't have to take as many risks. So you're needing more of a game manager at that point. So I'm not
6 targets a game and 2 carries a game.
And I'm not saying I don't like the signing. I like the signing from Curtis Samuel. I just think that wide receiver 23 numbers are not going to be replicated from him, even in this Washington football team offense, because I think he had inflated numbers because of his excess of his rushing attempts.
I say that Curtis Samuel is a top 25 wide receiver in 2021.
Oh, we have 2 bets here on the Fanalists podcast in one night. It is the longest podcast in history for us. So
let's go.
Let's keep it going.
All right. Rashard Higgins, 1 year, just a little over $2 million, re-signed with Cleveland. He's a dynamic young wide receiver, finished 6th among NFL wide receivers at 2.32 fantasy points per target. So he's trusted by Baker Mayfield to make clutch plays down the field or in the end zone. Higgins may become even more fantasy relevant if the Browns move on from OBJ. So just keep that in mind. Anything to add?
I was actually disappointed with the signing because I was actually looking for my DPJ shares here. I thought that Peoples-Jones might actually get some more playing time, but I think
he was dynamic. He was given like 20 yards a carry or 20 yards of reception, but
yeah, so I think it's just going to hinder his output and his opportunity. But I mean, as you said, he's a trusted target here for Baker, so it makes sense for the team.
There you go. Will Fuller, $10 million, 1 year, Miami. That's all you need to know.
Still cheaper than Nelson Agler.
This is true. Now, to be fair, Fuller will miss the first game of the season due to performance-enhancing drug suspension from the previous season that cost him 5 weeks. However, Like Fuller was putting up numbers. He was the PPR wide receiver, 7 points per game last season, was 8th among wide receivers with at least 40 targets. In yards per reception, he could be a great fit for stretching the field with Tua. Obviously, this bumps down Devonta Parker down to the number 2 slot, leaves Preston Williams in like this nebulous ether. I don't know. Like there was a lot of Preston Williams hype last year, and I was buying into it because he looked pretty talented, but the injuries have really cost him, and I don't think he can dig himself. He's an undrafted free agent, so there's not a lot of will there either.
And Tua sucks.
Okay, we're gonna move on. This is Billy just for saying random things.
He's a lefty. Okay, there's one good. Okay, Michael Vick doesn't count because he ran the ball.
Michael Vick,
Steve Young is the only other good lefty quarterback.
Mark Brunell.
Okay.
Thank you. 3 for 3.
Okay.
All right, we're moving on. I'm refocusing us. Keelan Cole signs with the New York. I'm refocusing us to Keelan Cole. Keelan Cole is the other Jets wide receiver that signed this offseason. He's been sneaky useful, scored more fantasy points this past season than Jacoby Myers, Darius Slayton, Gabriel Davis, Mecole Hardman. He won't be guaranteed a starting spot, but he did set career highs in catches and touchdowns last year. Brashad Perriman leaves, so Keelan Cole and Corey Davis take the spot. Brashad Perriman, though, signs a $3 million 1-year deal with Detroit. And look, if you're looking for a very deep late round best ball pick with an explosive pass and a wide open target share, Brashad Perriman is like this zero cost, possible high upside wide receiver just because he's going to be in Detroit and they have like 60% of their target share still open. So someone's got to catch passes from Jared Goff.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly.
No
point. TJ Hawkinson, buddy. I
Oh.
still love Hawkinson.
All right. Last wide receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster. We've been mentioning him throughout the podcast. Juju signed an $8 million 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I love that Juju loves the Steelers.
I do too.
But I don't love it for fantasy. Partly, I didn't like that the Steelers threw so much last year. The volume was there, but it was because the running game was pretty terrible and they didn't utilize play action. Like, play action, regardless of if you can run the ball effectively, is a very effective tool, and they just weren't using a lot of play action. And this type of play calling limited Juju's ceiling because defenders weren't biting. So his 84.7% of snap shares in the slot was a career high. So he was volume dependent, and so was Deontay Johnson. They were just, I think they had like 270 targets combined, something like that. Juju finishes the wide receiver 16 in PPR, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like he was more like the wide receiver 25 to 35 just throughout the year. And he finished higher than Johnson and Claypool, but for Juju and the rest of the Steelers offense, they need to address this running back position. They need to get back to play action because I think a player like Leonard Fournette would keep teams honest. He's one of the best running backs remaining in free agency. We'll see where playoff Lenny lands, but I mean, I prefer Deontay Johnson based on volume and his explosiveness to play on the outside rather than Juju in 2021. But I mean, I know they're getting the band back together. I think Juju has a ceiling, and that's about wide receiver 15 or so.
Yeah, I don't even care where he finishes next year. I just love the fact that he took less money. And I did a post on Twitter, and my autocorrect on my text-to-speech did the wrong 4, but that's another topic here. But the fact that he took less money, he showed, and we talked about this earlier, he showed the team aspect rather than all about me. And we talked about Tom Brady, and I'm so happy that Juju did this. And I think that the Rooney family here is going to take care of Juju next year when the salary cap increases. And I think that the Rooney family here is going to sign him to a long-term deal next year. It's not so much Juju betting on himself because he has shown to be capable. He has shown to be, a good spirit in the football world, but I really think that this shows loyalty. And I think that goes a long way with a lot of clubhouses, especially in today's NFL, when everyone is greedy and selfish and now about the money. And I really think that the fact that he stayed here, took less money, kept the loyalty to the Steelers, and said, hey, we want to get this team back together for Big Ben's rest. Hoorah. It shows a lot of team camaraderie, and I'm really happy that he did this. And it, to me, as like the kid in me and the player in me, the competitor, just loves the spirit that he has in this deal, and I couldn't be happier.
And he's young too. It's not like he's not going to make money later on as well, or that this is his last contract or anything like that. So I really like it. I agree. And this is probably Ben's last season too. So he wants to be in Pittsburgh for that. Yeah. Last position that we'll talk about tonight, tight ends. And the first one we have to talk about, the Patriots tight end situation. Jonnu Smith, 4 years, $50 million. Hunter Henry, 3 years, $37.5 million. I'll group them together. The Patriots combined committed 7 years and $87.5 million in the tight end position. Did you just spit out your water?
Almost. No, it wasn't water. It was wine. It would have got my shirt all red.
The Patriots traded their top pass catching tight end from last year, Ryan Izzo.
H to the Izzo.
Yeah, they traded him to Houston. Surprise, surprise. So Smith and Henry here's the thing is like Smith and Henry were not top 10 tight ends last year. They weren't. And I don't think they're going to be top 12 options for next year either. No. Both are talented. They received hefty investment. They're competing with each other and a bunch of mediocre wide receiving options for targets. It may be the case that the Patriots move from worst tight end to first, the best one, but a lot depends on the development of what I anticipate to be a new quarterback, because it can't be Cam Newton. Like, the offense can't flourish in a pass catching sense with Cam Newton behind center.
Yeah, I think they have pick 15, so they may address it in the draft if a quarterback slips. I mean, there's 5 capable quarterbacks in this draft, so I think that they address it here, and even if that means trading up and trying to grab one of these 5 if they have to.
And they've got a bunch of compensatory picks too, I think. So
they always do.
The package.
I mean, they're playing chess, and every other team is playing checkers. And you have the Houston Texans who don't even know what board game they're playing. And
is this rummy or euchre?
We're playing scrimmage here, and but I hate the signings. Like, I saw Jonnu Smith come, like, really? That's like the worst possible location. And then I saw Hunter Henry too.
No, I thought Jonnu Smith, the first time I was like, okay, they actually have an alpha to pass to. Like, they have at least someone who's capable of catching passes.
See, I was hoping like Seattle or somewhere that actually is going to throw to a tight end.
Oh, for Jonnu, sure.
Yeah,
but
and then
I thought for the Patriots, I was like, okay, they have a number 1 receiver now.
Yeah.
Until they sign Hunter Henry, who is also a capable pass catcher.
Yeah, it's just been I was not happy about any of the signings, and they're just gonna vulture off each other. There's gonna be a ton of 12 personnel. There really is, and I'm just not happy with this offense and the signings that they've gotten and what they've done.
Yeah. Well, former Patriot tight end Rob Gronkowski signed a 1-year, $10 million deal. Here's the thing: the narrative of Gronk for most of the season, last season, was he's been great. We heard Bruce Arians talk about how great of a blocking tight end Rob Gronkowski, and he is. But then playoff Gronk showed up and scored 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Look, anytime he's on the field, he's in the tight end 1 conversation, I think, but because of his chemistry with Brady. But there are still questions about his consistency. O.J. Howard and Cameron Braid are still on the roster, at least for now. We'll see if O.J. Howard maybe gets traded. But
another Achilles injury.
That's true. So we'll see what happens. But anytime that Rob Gronkowski is on the field with Tom Brady, you have to you can't bet against it. Another play I won't be betting against for quite some time, Robert Tunyan. He was offered a 2nd-round tender by Green Bay. He was a restricted free agent. And as long as Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay, Tunyan is going to be a top tight end. Tunyan finished as the tight end 1 overall in fantasy points per target at 2.99. Number 2 was Jonnu Smith at 2.16. That's a 0.83 points per target difference. Enormous. Regression to the mean will be inevitable for Tunyan. Like if you expect him to have 11 or 12 touchdowns next year, it's not going to happen. But we know Rodgers will look his way in the end zone. There is a chemistry there, and the Packers haven't signed a wide receiver. They didn't sign Will Fuller. They haven't signed Kenny Galladay, at least as of yet. We'll see if one's drafted, but even so, I still love Robert Tunyan as the number 2 or number 3 pass catching option in this offense.
You know, Aaron Rodgers is sitting on his couch in Chico going, why are we not getting another option here?
Well, because the wide receiver 2 on the team is not Tunyan. It's actually Aaron Jones.
Yeah, it's great they re-signed him, but I mean, he's got to get another wide receiver.
I agree.
Here.
Can't be thrown to Equanimous St. Brown in the end zone and expect him to catch it in the playoffs.
EQSB.
Oh gosh. All right, let's grind it out here, Billy. Anthony Firkser and Jeff Swaim re-sign with Tennessee. Now, this is interesting because Jonnu Smith, even with him on the team, Firkser was tight end 23 in receptions.
I like Firkser.
With Smith now signed in New England, Firkser has the no-name steal off the wire appeal for Dynasty. We all love those tiny steals that nobody knows the name, but you just grab them up real quick and they bring some value.
A constant. So in best ball, you really want 3 tight ends on your roster at all times. And he's been my go-to in like round 22, 24. Sure. And I just, at this point with Jonnu being sent to the Patriots, it's only a matter of time between Firkser starts going in like 15, 16 range. And at that point I'm out.
I mean, okay, it's Firkser and who else other than AJ Brown catching passes from Tannehill this season. Also, as a side note, will AJ Brown get under 200 targets this season?
Under 200 is so many, but yeah, I know where you're going with this. They have.
Who are they going to pass it to? Corey Davis is gone.
There's a lot of wide receiver talent in this draft.
I know
there really is, and
they're going to draft it in the draft.
They're going to draft a wide receiver, and let's face it, they're a run first team.
Yep.
And they're going to just pound the ball on the ground and
pass it to AJ Brown.
Pass it to AJ Brown. So it rhymes. Pound on the ground, pass to AJ Brown.
Sounds good to me. Gerald Everett signs a 1-year, $7 million deal with Seattle, and the tight end room in Seattle is still ugly, even after the retirement of Greg Olsen. Look, there's still Will Dissly there, my boy Colby Parkinson, Luke Wilson they're all still there. Everett's being paid like a starter, but there's like that low commitment. I think he's a low end tight end too. I haven't done the projections yet, but I don't want him on my team.
I don't want him on my team either, but I knew this was going to happen. I told you they were going to sign a vet, and here we are in one of those. What are those drafts we did? And you said we got to get Colby Parkinson. I'm like, no,
it was like a last round pick.
Doesn't even matter. No, it was irrelevant. I don't care if it was round 30.
Irrelevant. That's not even how it's spelled. You are irrelevant.
You're the one with the masters here.
Your pick is irrelevant.
Yeah. Colby who?
Gosh. I know. I was getting hopeful, but I mean, you can't teach 6'7", so.
No, you cannot.
All right. Well, it's still ugly in Seattle. That's the point here. Jared Cook signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Chargers. Yuck. But I mean, the opening is there. Hunter Henry left. Jared Cook is a tight end dependent tight end too. Touchdown dependent tight end too. He finished 2026th in tight end touchdowns. He had 7 last year, and he was 14th in air yards per game. This really squashes any hope of Donald Parham being a thing. He'll be serviceable. That's what I think. He'll be a serviceable tight end too.
Yeah, I think you said it.
Okay. Kyle Rudolph, 2 years, $16 million, New York Giants. Rudolph got the bag. That's all we need to know about that. He got the bag and he got paid like the 2-time Pro Bowler he is, Notre Dame alum. The Giants needed a more consistent receiving and blocking threat at tight end. Evan Ingram, not good at blocking. Evan Ingram, not good at catching the ball either. And Rudolph provides both of those. He is a safe outlet for a young quarterback Daniel Jones, and hopefully Kenny Golladay can sign with him for all of my Daniel Jones shares.
Yeah, not my favorite landing spot, but I think it could have been worse. It could have been the Patriots with the other two. You almost spit that out.
I almost did. That was great. Our last player who just signed, we will obviously be updating more free agency as things go on, but the last player that signed I think 2 hours ago, Dan Arnold, my boy tight end out of Arizona, now signs a 2-year, $6 million deal with Carolina. Here's the interesting thing. Ian Thomas ran a bunch of useless routes last year. He's just #not good at football, okay? Dan Arnold is better at football than Ian Thomas, and Carolina knows it. And they want this flex out tight end, pass-catching tight end. And I don't know what they're going to do about like filling up like the Curtis Samuel role, but the targets need to go somewhere. And I think Dan Arnold, other than Christian McCaffrey, but Dan Arnold provides at least some usefulness at the tight end position. He's also really tall.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I don't think they're going to be throwing to the tight end much here. You still have Christian McCaffrey,
DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson.
DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I think that it's at that point you're the 4th, 5th option on the field.
Okay, well, we'll just do a real quick recap of who's left in the free agency, and then we'll call it a night. We've got Alex Smith, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard still out there in the quarterback realm. James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Duke Johnson, James White, Todd Gurley, Lev Bell, Mike Davis. Any of those running backs stick out to you before we move on?
Fournette, I think could still be a thing. James White is rumored to be going to the Bucs.
Yep.
Go figure. And I think if that happens, I think that's a serious contender for a top 25 PPR back again.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Brady and the familiarity that they have with each other. So I would just keep an eye on it, something to monitor. I've been grabbing him in best ball with that news here in the late rounds, 18, 19, 20 again. So, and that could be a league winner at that type of pace.
We've got wide receivers Kenny Golladay, Antonio Brown, Sammy Watkins, T.Y. Hilton, and we'll find out real soon, hopefully, about Kenny Golladay. But he's got many suitors. The Bengals have been calling, the Bears have been calling, the Giants have been calling. I wish the Packers would call, but they don't think they have the cap space.
Yeah, I really hope he does not go to the Bengals. They need to really address the O-line, and then they need to just let your young talent develop. So I hope he goes to the Giants, quite frankly.
I hope so too, for all my Daniel Jones shares. The tight ends, Jordan Reed, Trey Burton, Darren Fells. Pretty much the tight end landscape was sucked up by the Patriots. So,
yeah, it doesn't matter at that point. The rest of them are history. Well, I just want to thank everybody for sitting here, because this was not even a Fantasy Football Fanalist live show. This was a Fantasy Football Fanalist movie. We're an hour and 42 minutes.
A marathon.
Hour and 42 minutes. And there's been, some loyal people here that have been staying on the entire time. So thank you to you.
We appreciate y'all.
We appreciate y'all very much. And as we said in the beginning, an hour and 40 minutes ago, there's some exciting news that's going to be happening here next week. So if you have not done so already, follow us on Twitter here at FF Analyst, at FF Musio, at FF Stalder, because exciting news to be developed here. Tuesday next week, we'll be able to really announce it here. So make sure that you stay tuned for that announcement. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Fanalist movie. and we hope to see you all back next week. Have a good night.